Shame on me.
There be an extra credit?
I'll just give myself 30 lashes tonight.
Say the last 2/3 points.
If I ask it, it's extra credit. I promise. It's not on the list. My promise is if I ask something not on the list, that's a freebie. Upside down. There you go. So, yeah, amazingly, renal sinus made the list. My apologies. And I've been minimizing that term all along, haven't I?
Mhm.
It's just the fat-packed space that's not really shown in these models because it's not important. So what is important is the renal cortex, the renal medulla, the renal pyramids. Renal pelvis will not be on the question, on the test. Renal artery, renal vein, and some of the circulatory branches of the renal artery, being the segmental artery, interlobar artery passing through here. Where it forms kind of an arch would be the arcuate artery, and where it invests into the renal cortex would be interlobular artery. And then technically, the interlobular artery becomes the afferent arteriole, carrying blood into the glomerulus. Afferent arteriole carries blood out and then into the peritubular capillaries, which are shown in blue and red surrounding the loop of Henle. The entire structure here would be one nephron, so the question might be, name this functional subunit of a kidney, with a tag on maybe the center of it. And the answer would be nephron. If I put the tag on this green little hairpin loop, the question would be, name this portion of the renal tubule. So clearly that answer is not nephron. Do you see the difference? So it's all in the questions. So be sure you read the questions carefully before answering. Don't be compelled to just write something down that you remember. It's a common problem. So if it's on the green loop, it's loop of Henle. You can also distinguish the proximal and distal convoluted tubules. The distal happens to be bright pink. The proximal is in kind of a flesh color. And then I also want you to know what is in the cortex and what is in the medulla. So the renal cortex would contain the renal corpuscle with the glomerulus and glomerular capsule, and also the convoluted tubules. Whereas the collecting duct in kind of yellow, as well as the loop of Henle and peritubular capillaries are in the renal medulla. So I covered glomerulus, renal corpuscle. If I really want glomerulus only, then I'll put a label right here and ask you, name this ball of capillaries. So that can't be a nephron. It can't be even a renal corpuscle. It's only the glomerulus. So I have to word it if I want one answer. Yes, Dustin.
I might have missed it last week, but renal fascia, adipose capsule, and renal capsule, are we crossing those out?
You are.
Okay.
Technically, only the renal capsule is in these models. That's the brown covering, the external covering of the kidney. The renal fascia are strands of collagen that bind it to the back abdominal pelvic wall, and the renal the adipose capsule rather is a layer of fat around the kidney. But you know what? After looking at 100 or more cadavers, I've never seen it except in one specimen, and that person died of hyperlipidemia, familial hyperlipidemia, in which their body had tremendous amounts of triglycerides, and so that the body would try to keep the blood moving by extracting the fats and depositing them around organs. And so I mentioned this before, when you open the abdominal pelvic cavity, it looked like the internal cavity was filled with fat surrounding organs. Your bodies don't look like that. There's essentially very little fat inside. Almost all of your body fat is subcutaneous fat between the skin and the muscle layer. There's almost no fat internally. A little bit in the sulci of the heart. I haven't seen anything around the kidneys in my lifetime. I think I've gone through pretty much everything there. Except juxtaglomerular apparatus, I said line that out. Line out podocytes, line out calyces.
You said also line out the veins.
Line out the veins.
Is that one of
Line out the hilum. Rochelle?
Last time you said there's a scripture.
Sorry, okay.
There will be a kidney slide, possibly two, probably one. So it's pretty important. The kidney slide, I will tell you, will be from the renal cortex. Because you'll be able to see little ball-like structures. And those balls would be the renal corpuscles containing the glomerulus and glomerular capsules. And so basically you'll look at that and the question will be name this organ and you write down kidney. And then the next question may be identify the part of a nephron at the end of the pointer. And that could be a renal tubule, either proximal or distal convoluted tubule. I'd have to give you another clue about that. Or if the pointer is on the glomerular capsule, I could ask that. Or if the pointer is on the glomerulus, I would ask that by asking, what is this ball of capillaries? So in each case, the question will lead you to the answer. And if that's not clear, you raise your hand. So that's the kidney. Moving to ureter, you can see it in this model. You can see it in the torsal model when the organs are removed, passing from the kidney to the bladder. And you can see it in this model as this yellow tube. The other one broke. So it's a unilateral ureter, extending from its merging with the renal pelvis and passing to the back of the bladder.
Unfortunately, Professor, your body was in the way. Can you show that one more time?
Ureter. Urinary bladder. This is a pretty good example of urinary bladder. And in the other models, all you see is the top of it. So this is probably the best specimen. And notice that I can open it. And by opening it, and we're looking at the back of a male, by the way. How do I know that? Because I see the prostate gland here, seminal vesicles in orange, and white represents the cut vas deferens. And then when we open the bladder, I see I used this model on a previous exam. So you see number 3 was named this histological surface of the bladder. That's called the trigony. And 4 probably was named the wrinkled mucosa of this organ, and that is rugae.
Can you still keep those questions on there? Yeah.
Yeah. Practicing my Russian. Or you know what? We're at male reproduction, last page. Gonads. That's not a word I'll ask you. So you can line that out. Testis is a word that you'll probably be asked. Remember, IS ending is singular, ES is plural. So where will you find these structures? Mostly. I got it, thank you. I would warn you that you really do need to look at these before leaving today. To answer these questions well on the practical without looking at the model will put you in
Dire straits.
deep doo-doo.
Okay.
So take a few minutes, it won't take you long, figure this out. And then you'll be able to see it on a diagram in the book and from that study it at home. But you really need to pick it up and handle the three-dimensional structure. Make him feel good, he wants your attention.
Why?
What are you talking about? I'm trying to, not successfully. You can see the bladder, right? Urinary bladder. Please write out urinary bladder. 2 words. Don't just say bladder. You can see this is a cut ureter that unites with the bladder. Of course, it came from the renal pelvis of the kidney. This other brown tube is actually the vas deferens. And that, to me, is probably the hardest part on this model. So remember that the vas deferens actually begins down here from the epididymis, which is this flesh-colored structure. The testis is white-colored. So testis, epididymis, and then vas deferens is a brown tube in the center of this structure. This whole structure is called the spermatic cord. Vas deferens then leaves the spermatic cord because it ends, and then enters the body at the inguinal canal, which is right here on this model. And then you can see the vas deferens entering the pelvic cavity back here. Do you guys see that? Going around the bladder, through the seminal vesicle right here, which is the same color as the tube of the vas deferens. Now, in this side of the model, it is not sectioned. On this side, it is sectioned, so it looks different. It looks like it has a lot of little spaces in it. You see that? That's also seminal vesicle. They just sectioned it on one side for you, so that you can see what it is clearly.
Can you turn it down, sir?
Sorry? Tip it down?
Yeah, thank you. Perfect, yes.
I can't believe that your phone has that good of a camera to zoom in. But is
Well,
that working?
yeah, it's working great. I'm zooming in right now. Perfect.
Cool.
Nice.
Also in this model, if we're looking at the this view, the purple structure, it's about the size of a small walnut, is prostate. Prostate gland. 2 words, prostate gland in purple. Always in purple on these models. And then when we turn this thing over, we look at the sagittal section, and it's still purple. So in the sagittal section, we can see the bladder, we can see rugae, we can see even the trigony. And then we see the opening of the urethra, and this is actually the internal urethral sphincter, and the external is just outside of it. The prostate gland is in purple. You see a little branch of the brown tube. That is the ejaculatory duct, which is the terminal end of the vas deferens and joins the urethra inside the prostate gland. So you can see all of that. So know the segments of the urethra. This is the prostatic urethra as it passes through the prostate. As it passes through the urogenital diagram, right there, it's very, very tiny, even on the model. That would be called the membranous urethra. And then the penile or spongy urethra is right here. And remember, that passes right through the middle of the corpus spongiosum, the spongy body in the center, that single cylindrical spongy body. And then, of course, the urethra opens as the urinary meatus or external urethral orifice. The other spongy body is the corpora cavernosa. There are 2 of them. Of course, the cross-section only shows you one, doesn't it? That's because they're side by side, and the other one just isn't cut. So this other spongy body would be the corpora spongiosa. You can see the glands of the penis, which is the tip, formed by an expansion of the corpus spongiosum. It's in purple. And so externally you see the shaft and the head. You see this has been a circumcised penis, so you don't see a prepuce, so you can line that term out. Guys getting restless? One more term I haven't showed you on this model is bulbourethral gland or Cowper's gland. That's a tiny little gland embedded in the urogenital diaphragm right here. Did I cover all the terms on the male? Questions? Moving to female reproduction. There are two views. This is sectioned and this is whole. What you're looking at is the uterus, vagina, fallopian tubes, and the ovaries. This is the broad ligament. This is the ovarian ligament. And the fallopian tube has been sectioned on one side, and so has the ovary on one side. So what on our list will you be responsible for? Certainly the word ovaries. So identify them. This is the one of two models. I'll show the other model in a second. We can see the uterine tubes or fallopian tubes. You can use either term. The infundibulum is the distal end, which is expanded of the uterine tube. Fimbriae are the little finger-like distal ends of the infundibulum of the uterine tube. Also visible in this model. Do you guys follow me? Mm-hmm. You can line out round ligament and suspensory ligament. I only ask that you